עינת, מה נשמע? תנסי עכשיו. הוא כאילו יפתח את זה בו נורא לי בשעה. שנייה. הלו? בסדר, תגידי, למה אני לא רואה את המסך? הנה, רואה, הכל בסדר. הכל בסדר. לא. אוקיי. ביי. עינת? זהו, תנסי עכשיו להיכנס. אני רואה אותך בפנים.
היי רות, המיקרופון שלך סגור, לא שומעים אותך.
עכשיו שומעים.
עכשיו שומעים.
נכון, תודה.
נחמד לראות אותך.
נכון. היום ראינו גם בבוקר אני שמעתי את ההרצאת פתיחה וראיתי את דורית אלט.
נכון.
כן, נכנסת, הכל
היא אצלנו עכשיו.
עינת, למה את כאילו שחור לבן?
כן, זה בגלל הרקע שבחרתי, אני אעשה רקע אחר.
וגם את צריכה לשחרר לנו את האפשרות לשתף, כי כרגע אין.
בסדר, שנייה. אוקיי. participants.
אז את אומרת...
רוקסנה... שנייה. לא, זה חגית צריכה לעשות. אני לא במעמד של הוסט כאן. אני אדבר עם חגית.
ביי. בעיות קשות עם ה...
אוקיי, אז כל המרצות, רותי זוזובסקי, רוקסנה רייכמן וגלוריה קיבלו הרשאה לקורס.
את כולם, אני חושבת, לכולם צריך לאפשר.
כן, תשמעי, אני לא במעמד של הוסט, אם את יכולה לתת להם מעמד של קו-הוסט, שהם יוכלו לשתף.
נתתי לכולם.
נתת? אוקיי, תודה.
הסיפור הזה מתחיל.
אוקיי.
Winter.
Yeah.
What is everybody else in Israel?
Everybody else in the group seems to be.
Yes, here tonight, just now.
Yes.
Yeah.
This
A
is
lovely hot evening.
It's 1:40 in the afternoon.
Afternoon.
yeah, early afternoon.
Early afternoon, 1:40 afternoon.
Okay, so welcome to our session, Writing in Different Voices and Evaluation of the Process. It belongs to the narrative track. I'm Einat Gruberman, and I'm the head of the Research Authority at the Mofet Institute. And our technical assistant is Dr. Hagit Rafaeli Mishkin. The session has 3 presentations and 10 minutes for each. Please write your questions in the chat box below, and we'll present them to the presenters during the session discussion, which is scheduled to the last 10 minutes. So I would like to turn to our first presenter, Professor Ruth Zouzovsky. She is a member of the Research Authority at the Kibbutzim College and works at the Mofet Institute and at the Center for Science and Technology Education in Tel Aviv University, too. She wrote her paper telling research stories in collaboration with me. So, I think
Yes. Thank you, Einat. Thank you very much. And really, I want to share with you the work that we have done together, Einat and me. The name of the paper, the full paper that I'm presenting, is Telling Research Stories on Research Units in Israeli Teacher Education Colleges. So these are 2 elements which are important here, the stories and the research units. And when I saw the invitation for this conference, I told myself that it is really something that is very fitting very much the story that I have to tell. And the theme of blurring the lines, academic, professional, and popular writing seems to be very suitable for the presentation. This drives me back 5 years ago when an idea came to my mind to use research stories as source for a study as opposed to conventional academic studies. Then I went to the editor of Mofet Publishing House and suggested this idea. They welcomed the idea. I got a green light to edit a book that later was called Telling Research Stories. And you can see, please, can I see the first shikufit? Yes. You can see the cover of this book, which seems to be a tree with lots of books hanging from it. The fruits are the books. The fruits of the tree are the books. And indeed, the paper that I'm going to present now is not written as a typical research paper. It is descriptive, interpretive. It is an autoethnographic analysis of stories written when former and current members of research units were invited to narrate stories of significant moments they experienced when serving in these units. Now we can go to the second shekel. The aim of the study was to use these stories and to learn about the development of the research units in the colleges of education, the challenges they had to address, and the unique nature of the research units. What are the research units? Research units were established in Israel colleges of education during the 80s and 90s as part of the academization process. I'm sure that even our guests from Australia know about it. Academization process in teacher education started at the 80s, but it was a big maneuver all over colleges in Israel in an attempt to raise the status of second-tier academic institution, or not yet academic institution, into first-tier research institutions. In the beginning, these were small service units that provided information to decision makers in the institution. But later on, very gradually, later on, they evolved into research authorities that conducted large-scale research projects on diverse topics and also nurture the culture, the research culture in the respective colleges and provide support for individual academic staff members in conducting and publishing their research. So this is, as a matter of fact, the context of the research units in the colleges of education. We can go on. Before going into the stories, I would like to talk about autoethnography genre as a tool to study what happens within an organization. We employed for our analysis the organizational autoethnography as a special genre of ethnography that links individuals to their organization. I'm citing now Boyle and Parry. It allows the organizational researcher to intimately connect the personal to the cultural through a peeling back of multiple layers of consciousness, thoughts, feelings, and belief. Any autoethnographic account contains the autobiographical elements. One of the virtues of storytelling as an autoethnographic genre is their contribution to sense-making, the struggle to make sense of our experience. And indeed, in the transparency, stories are sites of sense-making and identity construction. In our case, the identity is the identity of the research units in the colleges of education. Stories can have different forms. Usually they are sorted into big stories and small stories. Big stories follow a coherent temporal progression of events, have plot line with beginning, middle, and end, move from reported events to some complication and to the solution of this complication. Small stories do not adhere to all these features. Small stories are anecdotal, created from the daily context, identify identity in construction. Again, in this case, the identity of the units, the research units in the colleges of education. We used the stories to illuminate the links between the individuals in the college, their relationship, and the organization as a whole during different developmental phases of the unit. We can move to the method. So the study is in organizational autoethnographic research. 13 research unit members from 7 teacher education colleges in Israel contributed 46 stories about meaningful experiences they had while working in research units. The storytellers, some of whom served as heads of different research units, were not asked to write their stories in relation to a certain topic. The convergence of the themes that appeared in the stories into 6 common themes was the first sign that the story indeed touched on significant issues shared by different research in the different research units. In analyzing the stories, we used a method, doesn't appear on the transparency, which is called thematic analysis, Brown and Clerk's, for instance. This method allows to identify patterns, themes, within a data set in relation to the purpose of the analysis. the identification of these patterns.
2 more minutes. I'm sorry, 2 more minutes.
So,
2 more minutes.
okay. So it is a very interpretive part of work. Let's go on to the findings. The stories converged into 6 themes indicating different research units share common issues. The first theme was research culture in the College of Education. The second one, the role of the research units in nurturing individual research capacity. The fourth one was economic factors that are involved, ethical issues that are involved, and human relation and power relation that are involved in the work of the research units. At the end, there was some stories that dealt with the trades of development of the research units. Let's go on, finally. I think that I don't have time to discuss this story, but you can see the name of the story, the Sheikh's daughter and the Talmudic page, how these 2 things are related to research units and to research at all. The synopsis of the story is that the Sheikh's daughter was a student teacher who was reluctant to marry the man her father chose for her. 3 research unit members interpreted in different ways, and almost broke their work together. Each researcher insisted on her point of view, and this created tension and almost it stopped the study. Until they decided to adopt the Talmud method that afford different textual interpretation to the same text. This inclusive approach enables collaboration and became one of the characteristics of the research culture in the colleges of education, not the only one, but this story talks about this kind of feature of the research culture in the colleges of education.
Okay, I'm sorry, time is up.
Not 1 moment, nothing will happen. Let me do the only insights. The college research culture was, we learned it was collaborative and inclusive. Nurturing individual research capacity, we found, was critical yet supportive. The economic issue the colleges had to face was because of the lack of research budget. The solution was to apply to national and international funds and to form research collaboration. The ethical issues related to the autonomy of the researchers and copyright and loyalty arise and it requires integrity. And the last shekef, human relation and power relation were found to be a reason of the intermediary position between the college management and the staff. This requires sensitivity and flexibility. The common threads of development of the research units show that over the years, the supportive personal relationship of collaborative work created positively escalating cycles in which teacher-educator developing research abilities and engagement prompt the institutionalization of the research units as research authorities and the expansion of the service they provided. And then I can say to you all, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have a lot more to say than time to say it. I'm sorry. Our second presenters are Georgia Butterscane and Rachel Lynch from the Yarra High Secondary College at Melbourne, Australia. And good evening to you. It's getting late for you. The topic of the presentation is all-in-one bilingual story writing with Chin Hakka refugees. I hope I pronounced it correctly.
Oh, wow.
Yes, you have. Well done. Thank you very much. We've actually pre-recorded our presentation this evening just to be safe that it was going to be okay across technologies. So George is just getting that all set up for you now. So we will play the presentation. We really hope that you enjoy it. Take it away, Georgia.
Everybody, and welcome from here in Victoria, which is a very, very cold and wintry night here in Australia. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are around the world today. Georgia and I are extremely pleased to be presenting to all of you as part of the ifaw 2020 first ever online academic writing conference. Today we have titled our presentation All in One, Bilingual Story Writing with Chin Hakka Refugee Students. As campus principal of a government school here in Victoria in Australia, one of the greatest things I do in my job every day is encourage staff to take risks. Our school has seen significant change over the past 4 years, with a key focus on improving student outcomes across the board. The only way that this has been possible is through the tireless work of staff. As principal, it is my job to be supportive of staff, to provide them with trust, and to ensure they have the capacity to take risks in the programs that we offer here at the school. It is very pleasing to see many key improvements that have occurred across the college over the past 4 years, thanks to our wonderful staff. To give you a little bit of context about our school, I'll start by explaining to you where our students come from. Predominantly, our students have parents who are born right here in Australia. The second largest cohort of students, however, come from a country known as Myanmar. As you can imagine, coming from a country, a non-English speaking country like Myanmar, does certainly present language barriers. However, overcoming these language barriers is something that is extremely well supported at Yarra Hills Secondary College through our programs, in particular our strong English as an additional language program. This program aims to build upon their writing skills, which is one of the key focus of the presentation today through the writing piece All in One, which Georgia will be speaking to you about very soon. Our whole school approach to the EAL program has ensured its success. From the development of policies to the implementation of curriculum and pedagogy practices, which improve the language levels of these students, ensures that they can thrive in all areas of their schooling. While initially these policies and programs took several years for us to develop well, we are a school in Australia that prides itself on the approach we use to support these students and ensure their success in everything that they do. To provide you with a bit of global context, here is a wonderful photo of our Chin students in traditional dress. And there's also a map to explain to you where our students come from, which is a part of Myanmar known as Chin State. To continue to provide you some understanding of the worldly context in which these students come to us at Yarra Hills Secondary College and how they've been able to rise above existing challenges, I'd like to commence at where the writing process started, which is right here at Yarra Hills Secondary College. Upon arrival to Australia, usually after some time in other areas around the world, including Thailand, Malaysia and India, some of our students have travelled here to Australia and attend an English language school for at least 12 months. Over 6,643 kilometres away is the country of origin, known as Myanmar, a third world country. The Chin is one of the many persecuted ethnic minority groups who live in Myanmar. The Chin have persecution well documented by the UN and has seen many of these people seek refuge around the world, mainly in Australia, America and Norway, with over 100,000 refugees globally. The Chin come from predominantly agricultural, peasant-based societies, are extremely poor and have an extreme variation in their educational opportunities. I will now pass you over to Georgia to continue the rest of today's presentation for you.
Thanks very much, Rachel. I'm Georgia. I am on the right-hand side of that photograph. I'm the EAL Teaching and Learning Coordinator, and currently at Yarra Hills we have 39 EAL students in years 7 to 12. I'd like to read this quote. An important aspect of academic language is the organisation of written discourse. The recognition of and fluency with writing specific kinds of texts can contribute much to effective learning and content retention. This is indeed illustrated in the following project, all-in-one, writing project, all-in-one, which we're talking about. This came about because as part of our program, we run the living curriculum, which is a curriculum created from, with and for the students. It runs adjacent to the state curriculum, and it basically allows room for learning, provides opportunities for student agency, student voice with implicit differentiation. We can run the living curriculum because at Yarra Hills, our EAL teachers know how to create curriculum. How to create curriculum is a teacher expectation for our EAL teachers, and that is embedded in our model of EAL education we call SEAL. It's a strong model of EAL education. So how it began, I showed my Year 7 students a bilingual children's book that a local primary school had published, pictures on the right. Ban Sui Tong said, why don't we make a book? And that's simply how it started. Because we run a living curriculum, we can go with this sort of student suggestion. The result is all-in-one. It took 7 students, 40 hours of class time, over 2 terms, 1 semester. An average of 5 drafts per story was written. One student, Josh, wrote 17 drafts of his students, drove him mad, but he was determined to get it right. The original illustrations, as you can see on the front cover there, were by Muntar, who read everyone's stories and drew pictures to signify each one. Other images are credited throughout the book. It is totally written and edited by the students. The stories are in English and the blurbs are in Hakachin. As I mentioned before, Josh doing 17 drafts. His story is the longest, The Bear and the Monkey, and it's based on an old Chin story. A long, long time ago, Dennis made up a creative story. Boitar wrote How I Met My Dad, which is an extraordinary story based on his experience when, as a child, his father fled the country to begin the refugee process. And Boitar did not see his father again until they were reunited in Malaysia 7 years later. So for Boitar, as a 7-year-old boy with no memory of his father, it was like meeting him for the first time. Still not sure, Sung has his continual saga of chasing girls. Haunted House, Muntar, based on an experience she had. The Bad Tuesday, Ban Sui Tong, about breaking his arm at school. And then an incredibly sophisticated story called Forgiveness by Sun Peng Lien. As this illustrates on the left-hand side, the blurb to the story is written in Hakachin, and on the right-hand side, the story begins in English, continues in English, and with an illustration the students selected that they thought best complemented their story. After we finished our book, one of the students said, why don't we read it? Why don't we read our book to the students who first inspired us? So this is a photograph of Boitar reading his story to the prep and grade 1 students. All the students read the stories, and the preps and grade 1s absolutely loved it. So 4 years on, 5 of the 7 students are currently with us in Year 11. And speaking with them, reflecting on this project, saying things like, I learned how to read a book, how a book was published and understanding the blurb and contents page, etc. I never used to read them. It made me more patient. It gave me the idea to do good work, that it can always be improved. Use harder words, never go with one draft. And then these very insightful reflections on language, about the differences from their first language with English, which really aided further language development. So it's absolutely thrilling to hear this feedback and hear the students say that the impact of this Year 7 experience was lasting. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you for coming. If you would like a PDF copy of the book, please feel free to email me. Any other questions, Rachel and I are available now, and you can also email us if you'd like later.
So thank you very much, right on time. I wish I were a student in your school. Our last but definitely not least is a paper written by Dr. Roxana Reichman and the recently deceased Professor Noga Nagar. Professor Magen Nagar was the head of the MED Department of Teaching, Learning, and Mentoring at Gordon Academic College in Haifa, Israel. She passed away only a few weeks ago. Dr. Roxana Reichman is the head of the MED Department of Educational Administration and Leadership at Gordon Academic College. She is also the head of the Kivun Chadash program for academics who choose teacher education as a later career. She took part in 5 international programs as team leader and curriculum developer. Her fields of expertise are educational administration, teacher education, comparative education, and internationalization. The title of the presentation is The Evaluation of Academic Writing in MED Thesis. Please, Roxana.
Thank you very much. Can you see what I'm sharing?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so what you see here is the picture of Professor Noga Magen Nagar, who, as Einat mentioned, just passed away. The article that we wrote about this study was published. She got to see it published, and then she passed away quite suddenly, unfortunately. So, the study is an evaluation of academic writing in MED thesis, or what we call Avodat Gemer, final paper. The difference between, for those who are not from Israel, in MED programs in the universities, it is called a thesis. In teachers' colleges, it is called final paper, but it is really a study, research. So these MED programs are very important in terms of professional development, and the MED thesis is compulsory in all the Israeli teachers' college. It is not compulsory, by the way, in the universities, and we will discuss this. I will go very fast. It is, a lot has been written about it, and it is clear that such a process has a significant influence on school improvement, because the students are all in-service teachers, and they become more aware of organizational issues. The study is a mixed study, quantitative and qualitative. The purpose of the study was to evaluate the quality of academic writing. And we did this by looking at 194 theses over a period of 5 years. The first question was, what are the topics of the MED thesis? Are they relevant to the field? The 3 fields are, one program is teaching, learning, and mentoring. The second one is educational administration and leadership. And the third one is inclusive education. And the second question is, we looked at the correlation between the student specialization and the topics, the research method, the field, the tools, the research population, and the number of participants. So it was, and the final grade, sorry. So it was really a big study. As you can see, we had 6.2% men and 93.8 women. This is quite huge. This is quite characteristic to these programs. 89, almost 90% of them were Jewish, and 10%, 10.3% were Arabs and Druze. So we looked at all this, and in addition to that, we looked at the demographic data, what are their gender, age, educational stage, ethnic background, seniority at work, and duration of studies. The qualitative part, I'm not going to go into the details because I see that this is a narrative session, so people know about qualitative research. I don't have to give all the information. I would just say that in order to achieve a better reliability, so to make sure that the interpretation were not biased, each one of us conducted her own content analysis independently, and then we discussed it. We found 5 categories and 35 subcategories. And in the article, we marked the frequency level, high, medium, and low, and we showed all the data. We saw the field, so the topics of the thesis. So we saw that every program, the students in each program chose different topics, as was expected. For example, I will just give 2 examples. In educational administration, most of the research was about principals, school staff, parents, schools, and the correlation between them. When I say correlation, I mean something like parental involvement from the point of view of principals and teachers, and from the point of view of parents. In inclusive education, they looked at inclusion, regular classroom learning, and pupils. And in teaching, learning, and mentoring, they stress mainly teachers and schools. I will just give, before I go to the quantitative analysis, I will just give 2 or 3 examples. For example, in educational administration, one title was the correlation between the teacher's perception of the principal's leadership style and their level of motivation and self-efficacy. In teaching and learning, early childhood teachers' perception of parental involvement. And in inclusive education, the contribution of an intervention program to the improvement of behavior and learning achievements of special needs students integrated into a regular classroom. So just to give an idea. Now, as to the quantitative analysis, the methodology was we used the structural equation modeling methodology, SEM, which allowed us to look at all the variables and to create a model. So this is the model. And if you look at it, you see that first of all, we see that the variables as graduate program, research topic, research method, and research field explain 36% of the variance of the research population variable. Research method variable, meaning quantitative or qualitative, explains 45% of the variance of the research tool. And variables such as the graduate program, the research method, and the research field, and the research population explain together 62% of the variation. When we see that the research topic has a low intensity, significant positive impact on research population, meaning teacher, student, principal, or mixed. In other words, students who write a thesis about teaching tend to choose teachers as their research participants.
2 more minutes.
2 more minutes. And students who write about a managerial topic tend to choose pupils, actually, to look at pupils. That was quite interesting. while students writing about inclusive education tend to choose mentors. In contrast to that, the research field has a high intensity, significant positive impact on the research population, which means that graduate students who choose to conduct their research in schools tend largely to choose teachers as their research population, followed by pupils. The research method variable was found to have a high intensity, significant positive impact on the research tool and on the number of participants. If I only have one more minute, I will say that one of the conclusion is that all the MED students enrolled in these 3 programs wrote theses that show deep understanding of the teaching profession. I will say that the average age is about 40. So it is basically a situation in which the teachers are personally involved in researching their own work, and they attempt to better understand the system as a whole. So whether they choose after that to become principals or not, it is less important. It is clear that they better understand the system. If we discuss, if we talk about recommendations, we actually thought that the fact that the thesis is the compulsory part of the MED programs in teacher colleges creates some challenges for the staff in these colleges. And one of the limitations of this study is that we did not interview, for example, the students who wrote this thesis, and also not the faculty members who advised them. And that's a point that can be followed later, as long as a longitudinal study that will show what happens during the years, and also a comparative study if we can look at other colleges. There is also the question of the thesis, which, as I said at the beginning, is compulsory only in the teacher colleges and not in the universities. And that's also something that should be discussed because the degree that they get is exactly the same degree. So there is a question of on one hand, it seems like it's not fair that in teachers' colleges, they have to do this type of work, which is not compulsory in the universities. On the other hand, we believe that it allows teachers to learn much more about themselves and about their work. And therefore,
thank you very much, Roxana. We are way over time. We have maybe one question, time for one question left. Any questions? Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm just quite interested, Roxana, in the number of EAL students that you have, or the number of EAL teachers that you have in Israel. I don't know if it's something you would know, or just at your college.
I can tell you because in the educational administration and leadership program, we have about over 250 students right now, and this is and the registration has not ended yet. So when I say 250, I include both cohorts, of course, because the program is a 2-year program. So we have about 80 students in one cohort and about 130, 40, I don't know the exact numbers in the second year. And so it's a big department. In the MED graduate school at Gordon College, this is the largest department, the largest MED department.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you everybody for being here. Our time is actually up. And you have participants' emails, so you can contact them privately.
Yeah, if I can say only one word, if you are interested in the article, you can email me and I can send you the article.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sure many of us will. Okay, so have a nice conference, and we'll see you in the next session. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.